Hey folks, hope you're all doing well, and welcome to episode 38 of Recommend an Album to Review. Alright, so the way this show works is every week in the comments you folks are kind enough to leave me a record to review, and then the following Thursday at 7 p.m. when these shows air, I will have picked one of those and done a review of it. So criteria is real simple, single album, and something that I haven't already covered on the channel. And while we're talking about things, please consider liking and subscribing to this video. That would be much appreciated. All right, so for this week, got a pretty interesting a band that was suggested to me. I really dig the name. I think the name is great. The band is called The Dream Syndicate, and the record is called... it's got a long ass name. Ultraviolet Battle Hymns and True Confessions. Okay, so a little bit about this band. From what I've read, they were together throughout the 80s, and then they broke up in the late 80s, and then they reformed in 2012 and have been putting out records. I believe this came out in 2022. I think this is, if not their most recent, their second most recent. The core members of the band, the core member of the band is a gentleman named Steve Wynn. He is the singer, songwriter, guitarist. He's sort of the main hub. Then you've got drummer Dennis Duck, bassist Mark Walton, and lead guitarist Jason Victor. And they have a new member, Chris Kakoves, I think that's how you say his name, on keyboards. So, what I hear in this record, and I know these guys were out in the 80s, but I don't know if they had, that's the only album I've heard of theirs, but just this album, I'll only talk about this record because it's the only one I've listened to. But I hear, Radiohead, I hear, maybe even some Oasis at times, definitely some like 70s Bowie influence in here as well. There's some shoegazy moments, with sort of a lot of sort of ambient, guitar sounds, but super melodic and really, one thing is for sure, everything is really cool and really interesting. There's a level of sophistication, it's very, very artsy, kind of, very sophisticated at times as well on this record. So it's a real blend. It's interesting that these guys are from LA, because when I listened to them, I would have bet my bottom dollar they're from England, but they're actually, they're from LA. They're from what I read, a quite respected band. They never really blew up big in the 80s, but they're a very well-respected band in that time period of, in the 80s and of course now as well, because they're back together. But anyways, let's go through these tracks. All right, the first track is called Where I'll Stand. Got a keyboard intro, then some heavy guitars, some really good guitar orchestration on this track. There's a nice hook. I love the vocals on this. I guess by Steve. He's got one of those what I consider like character voices, and meaning that he's not not a how would I explain it? The quality of his voice. It's more the quality of his voice than his range or power or anything like that. He's just got a nice timbre to his voice, and sounds great on this. And I could hear like a little bit of 70s Bowie in this, with some some distorted kind of guitars in the background, setting a really cool soundscape. But it's a great track. I really like the opening track, which is Where I'll Stand. All right, the second track is called Damian, and this one is a lot cleaner, tighter, a little more sparse in the arrangement. It's got a really nice R&B feel. Again, like a very sophisticated kind of R&B. Listening to a song like that, I'm like, man, these guys got to be from England, but they're not, because they totally have that vibe. But yeah, Damian is a really cool song. I did a Mink DeVille album ranking a while back, and that song could have come off of that record. So anyways, there you go. Then you got Beyond Control. This is one of the longer tracks, almost at 6 minutes. This is a little bit more of an experimental track. Not quite as poppy and hooky as the other. It's a little more experimental, a little more artsy, let's say, avant-garde, let's say, but still not a bad song. Beyond Control. Next is the Chronicles of You, just under 3 minutes. This could have been an Oasis song. I get that kind of vibe from it, with the guitars, kind of the heavy guitars and the single line, sort of phrasing, melody phrasing. Um, Again, pretty good track. Again, very British sounding, but there you go. And you got Hard to Say Goodbye at just a little over 5 minutes. Acoustic guitar on this. Just kind of a slow, really mellow song that just kind of floats, all the way through. Um, some nice little guitar parts sprinkled, over top to kind of spice it up a bit. But it's just kind of I don't know, just very mellow, slowly progressing tune. You know what I mean? Kind of puts you in a mood, sort of hypnotic, if you will. But a pretty good track. Hard to Say Goodbye. Every Time You Come Around. Man, Psychic Furs. If you remember the Psychic Furs, kind of gives me a bit of that vibe. A little keyboard riff with some heavy guitars sort of droning in the background, mid tempo. Most of their stuff I find is mid tempo. But yeah, it's that vibe, and it's again very very cool. Yeah, dig it. Trying to Get Over. This might be my favorite song on this record. I really like the guitar work on this. There's a really interesting guitar figure that's really unorthodox but really cool. I like the vocals on it. This is more of a guitar, sort of a guitar centric song. I mean, there's guitars in all the songs, but there's usually a keyboard accompanying it. This one is a little bit more guitar centric. Maybe that's why it's my favorite. I don't know. I just really like that guitar figure, and I like the vocal melody on it. It's a great track. Lesson number one. This one's great. Super melodic. The vocal, the chorus part, the B section. It's just a really good song. The hooks, the progressions. It's just a really catchy tune. I got My Lazy Mind. This is probably the song I like the least. It doesn't really. It sets a mood. Kind of a sort of a mysterious, kind of dark vibe. Just doesn't go anywhere. There's not enough variety to it. And I don't know. I dig the vibe, but it just goes on for a little bit too long too. It's a little over 5 minutes. Yeah, one of my lesser favorites on this record. And the last track, Straight Lines. The last two songs for me are sort of where the record takes a dip. That's another one. It's very artsy, experimental. There's some guitar effects and some weird guitar parts and some keyboards over top of it, and it's avant-garde again, if you will. It doesn't really, I don't know, doesn't really grab me. I mean, for the most part, the songs are pretty good, if nothing, if not at least interesting to great. Except for those last two, they don't do it for me. So as a whole, what do I think of this record? I think this record is really good. Again, there's an air of sophistication to it. The playing of it, the arrangements of it, how the different parts kind of weave together are really really cool. Really interesting chord melodies on some of these songs. It's not your typical 145. There's a lot of interesting things going on in this record. I love the quality of the vocal on it. Yeah, it's just a really good listen if you like that sort of. I know these guys are not from that era, but if you like that Brit pop kind of Radiohead, I mean, you mentioned like Psychedelic Furs. One of the songs sounds like, a little bit of David Bowie. I mean, if you like that kind of vibe, maybe even Television a little bit. If you like that kind of vibe, sort of that new wavy alternative, little bit artsy, you know, sound. But from LA, you might like these guys. If I was to rate them out of five, oh man, it's between a 3.5 and a 4 for me, maybe 3.75 if that's fair. Um, but I'd say, yeah, 3.5. Let's say 3.5. So there you go. But pretty good record. One of the better ones I've heard in a while. So thanks for the subscriber that suggested this. And again, if you have a record you'd like me to check out for the next episode, please throw that in the comments. If you're new to the channel, consider liking and subscribing. And we'll see you next Thursday at 7 p.m. Cheers.